The snow fell heavy on Christmas Eve as I stood on the porch with my suitcase, watching my father's silhouette disappear behind the frosted glass door. 22 years of memories, gone in a single moment. The lock clicked. Final. Absolute. The kind of sound that echoes in your bones. I was homeless on Christmas. My name is Elena Carter, and this is the story of how one winter night shattered everything I thought I knew about my family, and how a stranger's confession would change my life forever. If you want to hear stories that will leave you speechless, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't regret it. The argument started 3 hours earlier, during what was supposed to be our annual Christmas dinner. My father, Richard Carter, sat at the head of the table like he always did, carving the turkey with mechanical precision. My stepmother, Patricia, smiled that plastic smile she'd perfected over the 8 years since she'd married into our lives. And me, sitting there like a ghost at my own family's table. "Dad, I need to tell you something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't look up. The knife continued its methodical work. "What is it, Elena? I'm dropping out of medical school." The knife stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Patricia's fork clinked against her plate, unnaturally loud in the quiet. "You're what?" My father's voice was dangerously calm. "I can't do it anymore. I hate it. I never wanted to be a doctor. That was your dream, not mine. I want to study art. I want to paint." His face turned the color of raw meat. 8 years, Elena. 8 years of my money. Harvard Medical School. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed? I'm sorry, but I can't pretend anymore. Mom would have understood. That's when everything exploded. Don't you dare bring your mother into this. His fist slammed against the table, making the wine glasses tremble. Your mother's been dead for 10 years. She doesn't get a say. She would have wanted me to be happy. Patricia reached across the table, touching my father's arm with those perfectly manicured fingers. "Richard, maybe we should discuss this calmly." He shook her off like she was a mosquito. "You want to throw away your future? Fine. But you're not doing it under my roof. Not with my money." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying get out. Pack your things. I want you gone within the hour." I laughed. Actually laughed. Because the absurdity of it hit me like a wave. "You're kicking me out on Christmas Eve? You made your choice. Now live with it." That's how I ended up on the porch, suitcase in hand, watching my breath turn to mist in the frozen air. My phone showed 11 missed calls from my best friend Maya, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Where do you even start explaining that your father chose his pride over his daughter on the most important night of the year? I started walking. No destination, no plan, just one foot in front of the other, dragging my suitcase through 2 inches of fresh snow. The Boston streets were empty, everyone tucked inside their warm homes with their functional families. Christmas lights blinked in windows, mocking me with their cheerfulness. I made it 6 blocks before I had to stop. My hands were numb, my face burned from the cold. I ducked into a 24-hour diner, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like regret and the fluorescent lights make everyone look half dead. The waitress, a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and tired feet, brought me coffee without asking. "Rough night, honey?" You could say that. She nodded like she understood everything from those 3 words. Maybe she did. "I'm here till 6 if you need anything." I sat there for 2 hours, nursing that coffee, trying to figure out what to do next. My bank account had $800. My credit cards were in my father's name. I had nowhere to go. That's when he walked in. I didn't pay attention at first. Just another customer seeking refuge from the cold. But then he sat down in the booth directly across from me, and I couldn't help but notice him. Mid-50s, expensive coat, silver hair perfectly styled despite the weather, the kind of man who didn't belong in a place like this. He ordered coffee, then looked directly at me. "Elena Carter?" My heart stopped. "I don't know you." "No, but I knew your mother, Victoria Carter. We were very close once. I should have left." Every instinct screamed danger, but something in his eyes, a sadness that mirrored my own, kept me frozen in place. "Who are you?" "My name is James Whitmore. I'm sure you've never heard of me, and there's a reason for that. Your mother made me promise to stay away, but I've been watching from a distance. making sure you were safe, making sure you had what you needed. Watching me. That's creepy. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I deserve that, but I'm not here to frighten you, Elena. I'm here because today is the day I was supposed to tell you the truth. Your mother made me swear that if anything ever happened, if Richard ever turned his back on you, I would step in. She was very specific about the timing. What truth? The truth about who your father really is, about who I am, about the secret your mother kept for 23 years. I wanted to leave. I should have left. But the desperation of homelessness and the mystery of this stranger's words kept me pinned to that vinyl booth. Tell me. James Whitmore pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, then turned the screen toward me. It was a picture of my mother, young and radiant, standing next to this man on what looked like a beach. They were holding hands. She was laughing, her head thrown back in pure joy. I'd never seen her look that happy in any photo with my father. This was taken 24 years ago, he said, in the Maldives. Your mother and I were planning to get married. I don't understand. Your mother was engaged to me first, Elena. We met in college. Art students, both of us. We were going to travel the world, paint, live a life of creative freedom. Then she met Richard at a charity gala 6 months before our wedding. He was everything I wasn't, established, wealthy, from the right family. Her parents pushed hard. Society pressures. You know how it is with old Boston money. She left you for my dad? Not exactly. She tried to fight it, but then she got pregnant. With you, my stomach dropped. With me? Yes. And Richard assumed you were his. Your mother never told him otherwise. She married him 3 months later. Gave birth to you 7 months after that. Everyone assumed you were premature. But you weren't, Elena. You were exactly on time. No, this is insane. You're lying. James pulled out an envelope, thick and yellowed with age. These are letters your mother wrote to me over the years. She never sent them. I found them after she died. She'd been keeping them in a safety deposit box. Her attorney gave them to me with instructions to give them to you when the time was right. How did you get them if she never sent them? Because I was there, Elena, at the hospital, the day she died. Richard doesn't know, but I was in the waiting room. She asked for me. She told me everything, made me promise to protect you if Richard ever discovered the truth. My hands shook as I opened the first letter. My mother's handwriting, unmistakable. The date at the top read December 26th, the year I was born. My dearest James, it began. I am writing this on Elena's first Christmas, and my heart is breaking. She has your eyes. Everyone comments on how different she looks from Richard, but no one suspects. I made a choice, and I must live with it. But I want you to know that every time I look at her, I see you. I see the life we could have had. I'm so sorry. I hope someday you can forgive me. All my love, Victoria. I read letter after letter, 22 years of secret confessions. My mother's guilt, her love for a man she'd never stopped thinking about, her fear that Richard would discover the truth, her plans to tell me when I turned 18, then 21, always finding reasons to wait just a little longer. The last letter was dated 3 weeks before she died in that car accident. James, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Please find Elena. Tell her everything. Richard is not a bad man, but he's not her father. She deserves to know who she really is. There's money set aside, a trust fund in your name, enough to ensure she never has to depend on Richard's approval or his wealth. Enough to let her be free. Tell her I loved her more than anything. Tell her I'm sorry. Victoria. I looked up at James, tears streaming down my face. Why now? Why tonight? Because Richard knows. What? James leaned forward, his voice dropping. 3 months ago, he took a genetic test, one of those ancestry kits. Patricia convinced him to do it for fun. When the results came back, he discovered that you're not genetically related. He's known since September. He's been planning this, waiting for the right moment to cut you out of his life completely. But he raised me. He was my dad. And when he thought you were his daughter, when you were following his plan for your life, he could justify it. But the moment you defied him, the moment you chose your own path, You became a reminder of your mother's betrayal. That's why he kicked you out tonight, Elena. Not because of medical school, because you're not his. I felt like I was drowning. Everything I thought I knew about my family, my identity, my entire life was a lie. How much? The trust fund? $15 million. Your mother had a small inheritance from her grandmother. She invested it wisely. James, if anything happens to me, this goes to Elena. Not Richard, never Richard. She wanted you to have the freedom to be an artist, to live the life she never got to live. I couldn't breathe. 15 million? There's more. I'm not just some random man from your mother's past. I'm James Whitmore. Whitmore Industries. We make medical devices. I'm worth about 3 billion, give or take. I never married, never had children. Your mother was the love of my life, and even though I couldn't have her, I've spent the last 23 years making sure her daughter would be taken care of. I've anonymously funded your schools, your activities, everything Richard thought he was paying for. I was the mystery scholarship that got you into that art camp when you were 14. I was the grant that covered your supplies. I've been your invisible guardian angel. Why? Because you're Victoria's daughter, and because, even if I can't claim you as my own, I wanted to give you the gift she never had. Choice. I sat there in that diner booth, my entire world rewritten in a single conversation. The father who raised me wasn't my father. The man sitting across from me, a stranger, had been secretly supporting me my entire life. My mother had lived with this crushing secret for over 2 decades, and I, Elena Carter, wasn't even a Carter at all. What do I do now? My voice sounded small, broken. Whatever you want. You're free, Elena. Truly free. The trust fund is already in your name. I just need you to sign some papers. You can go to art school. You can travel. You can paint every day for the rest of your life if that's what makes you happy. You don't owe Richard anything. You don't owe me anything. This is your mother's gift to you, her apology for the choice she made. I thought of Richard, sitting in his warm house, probably relieved to finally be rid of the living reminder of his wife's betrayal. I thought of Patricia, who would now get everything, all his wealth and attention. I thought of my mother, carrying this secret through years of a loveless marriage, protecting me from a truth that would have destroyed our family. And I thought of myself, sitting in a diner on Christmas Eve, homeless and heartbroken, discovering that I was actually heir to a fortune and the daughter of 2 people who had loved each other enough to make impossible sacrifices. I want to see her grave, I said, tomorrow. I want to tell her I finally understand. James nodded. I'll take you. I go every year on Christmas. It's the one day I let myself admit how much I miss her. We sat there until dawn, James telling me stories about my mother before she became Mrs. Richard Carter, about the girl who painted sunrises and believed in magic, who laughed too loud and dreamed too big, who chose security over passion and regretted it every day for the rest of her life. When the sun finally rose on Christmas morning, we walked out of that diner together. James had called his driver, in a black car waited at the curb, warm and ready. One more thing, he said as we approached the car. You don't have to decide anything today. Take your time. But when you're ready, I'd like to be part of your life. Not as a father. I know I can't replace the man who raised you, even if he wasn't your biological parent, but as family, as someone who loved your mother and wants to honor her memory by supporting her daughter. I'd like that. We drove to the cemetery, the roads quiet with Christmas morning peace. My mother's grave was simple, elegant, just like she'd been. Victoria Ann Carter, beloved wife and mother, the dates of her too short life engraved in granite. I knelt in the snow, James standing respectfully back, giving me privacy. Hey, Mom, I know now. I know what you did. I know why you did it. And I forgive you. I understand. You were trying to give me stability, security, everything you thought I needed. But what I needed most was you. And I'm sorry I didn't get more time. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying snow like scattered diamonds. For just a moment, I swear I felt her presence. A warmth despite the cold. An approval I'd been seeking my entire life. I stood up, brushed the snow from my jeans, and walked back to James. I'm ready. Ready for what? To start over. To be who I was meant to be. to paint, to live, to make choices that are mine and mine alone, to stop trying to earn love from people who can't give it, to accept that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. James smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. Your mother would be so proud. I moved into a small apartment in the North End that week, using just a fraction of the trust fund. Nothing extravagant. I didn't need a mansion. I needed space to paint, large windows with northern light, and the freedom to wake up every morning knowing I was living my truth. James and I had coffee every Sunday. He told me more stories about my mother, showed me her old paintings that he'd kept all these years, introduced me to a side of her I'd never known. We became friends. Then something more than friends. Not romantic, but family. The kind you choose. Richard never contacted me, not on New Year's, not on my birthday 3 months later. I heard through mutual friends that he and Patricia had moved to Connecticut, started fresh where nobody knew about the daughter he'd disowned. Sometimes I wondered if he ever thought about me, if he ever regretted that Christmas Eve decision. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. I enrolled in the Rhode Island School of Design for the fall semester, started painting every day, big emotional canvases that poured out all the grief and confusion and strange, unexpected joy of discovering who I really was. My first gallery show sold out in 3 hours. Critics called my work raw and honest. I called it survival. Maya, my best friend, finally heard the whole story over wine and tears in my apartment 6 months after that Christmas Eve. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. You know what this means, right? What? You're free. Completely, totally free. And that's the greatest Christmas gift anyone could ever receive. She was right. 2 years later, I stood in a packed gallery in Soho, surrounded by my paintings, large-scale portraits of my mother from memory and imagination, the girl she'd been, the woman she'd become, the choices she'd made, the love she'd sacrificed, the daughter she'd protected. James stood beside me, proud and emotional. This one's my favorite, he said, pointing to a canvas that showed my mother on a beach, young and laughing, paint splattered and free. It's exactly how I remember her. She would have loved this, I said, all of it. She's here, Elena, in every brushstroke, in every color. You gave her back the life she never got to live. That's more than most children can say about their parents. The gallery owner approached, champagne in hand. There's someone here who'd like to meet you. He's been staring at your work for the past hour. I turned, expecting another collector or critic. Instead, I saw Richard Carter standing 15 feet away, older and smaller than I remembered. Patricia wasn't with him. He looked alone, diminished, like a man who'd realized too late what he'd lost. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the crowded room. 2 years of silence hanging between us. Then he walked over, stopping at a careful distance. Your work is beautiful, he said quietly. I saw the write-up in the Times. I had to come see for myself. Thank you. He looked at the paintings, really looked at them, seeing my mother through my eyes for the first time. She was an artist, you know, before we met. I made her stop. Thought it was frivolous. I see now that I took something essential from her. You took a lot of things from a lot of people, I said, not unkindly, just truthfully. I know, and I came here to say I'm sorry. For Christmas Eve, for all of it. I let my pride destroy our relationship. I let my anger at Victoria's Secret blind me to the fact that you were still my daughter. Biology doesn't change 22 years of raising you. I see that now. Too late, probably. But I needed you to know. James stepped forward, protective but calm. Richard. James. My former father nodded. I should have known you'd be here. You were always there, weren't you? In the background. Making sure she had what she needed when I was too stubborn to see it. Someone had to be. The two men who'd both shaped my life in different ways faced each other across the battlefield of past mistakes and present regrets. Then Richard did something I never expected. He extended his hand. Thank you for taking care of her when I wouldn't. James shook it. She didn't need taking care of. She's her mother's daughter, strong enough to survive anything. We just gave her the resources to thrive. I watched these two men, both flawed, both trying in their own ways to make amends for past failures. And I realized something fundamental. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about releasing the hold that pain has on your future. I'm glad you came, I told Richard. It means something. It won't erase what happened, but it's a start. Can we talk sometime? Coffee, maybe? Maybe, when I'm ready. He nodded, accepting the boundary I'd set. That's fair. I'll wait. However long it takes. He left shortly after, and I watched him go with a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The relationship we'd had was dead, but maybe someday we could build something new, something honest, something not based on obligations and expectations, but on choice. The show was a massive success. I sold every painting. Art critics called me a rising star. Magazines wanted interviews. But the greatest success wasn't the money or the fame. It was standing in that gallery, surrounded by my work, knowing that I'd honored my mother's memory by living the life she'd dreamed for me. James and I flew to the Maldives the following Christmas, visiting the beach where he and my mother had fallen in love 3 decades earlier. We scattered white roses in the water, a tribute to a woman who'd made impossible choices out of love and fear, who'd protected a secret to protect her daughter, who'd arranged for freedom from beyond the grave. I painted her there, on that beach, young and alive and full of dreams. It was the most important work I'd ever created. Not for a gallery or a collector, just for me, just for her, just for the truth. When we returned to Boston, I made a decision. I used part of the trust fund to establish a scholarship for young artists from struggling families. Girls who'd been told their dreams weren't practical. Boys who'd been pushed toward careers they didn't want. Kids who needed someone to believe in them, to give them the resources to chase their passion. I called it the Victoria Carter Memorial Arts Fund. Every year, we'd give 10 students full rides to art school, plus living expenses, plus materials. Everything they'd need to focus on their craft without the burden of financial stress or family pressure. James matched my donation, then doubled it. By the end of the first year, we'd expanded to 50 students. By the third year, 200. Former recipients started successful careers, opened galleries, taught the next generation. My mother's secret sacrifice had rippled outward, creating waves of creative freedom for hundreds of young people who might otherwise have given up their dreams. On the 5th anniversary of that Christmas Eve when my father kicked me out, I received a letter in the mail. Richard's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a short note and a check. Elena, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I saw what you're doing with the Victoria Carter Fund. It's beautiful. It's exactly what she would have wanted. This is the money I saved for your medical school education. I'd like it to go to the fund instead, to help more kids follow their dreams. It's not enough to make up for what I did. Nothing ever will be. But maybe it's a start. With regret and respect, Richard, the check was for $800,000. I cried, not for the money, but for the gesture, for the man who'd finally learned to let go of control, who'd recognized that love isn't about ownership or expectations. It's about supporting people as they become who they're meant to be, even when that path doesn't match your vision. I added the money to the fund and sent Richard a simple reply. Thank you. This would make her happy. We started meeting for coffee every few months after that. Awkward at first, slowly becoming easier. We'd never have the relationship we'd had before. That innocent father-daughter bond was gone forever, but we built something new, something more honest. 2 people who'd hurt each other learning to coexist in the aftermath. Patricia, I learned, had left him 6 months after I'd been kicked out. Apparently, once she realized Richard's fortune would now go to charity and distant relatives rather than to his daughter, and by extension, to her, she'd lost interest. He was alone in that big house, confronting the consequences of his choices every single day. I didn't feel satisfaction at his loneliness. Just a quiet sadness for all the wasted years. All the love that could have been shared but wasn't. All the pride that had poisoned what should have been simple and pure. 10 years after that Christmas Eve, I stood in my studio, now a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, working on my largest commission yet. A 30-foot mural for a children's hospital depicting stories of hope and healing. James sat in the corner, reading the newspaper, a comfortable presence I'd grown to depend on. Your mother would be impossibly proud, he said, not for the first time. I think about that a lot, what she'd think of all this, of who I became. She knew. That's why she made all those arrangements. She saw your potential, even when you were a baby. She knew you'd need the freedom to chase it. Did you ever regret not fighting for her? For not trying to win her back? James set down his newspaper, thoughtful. Every single day for the first 5 years. Then I realized that real love isn't about possession. It's about wanting the other person to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include you. Your mother made the choice she thought was right for her and for you. I had to respect that, even when it broke my heart. But she wasn't happy. The letters prove that. No, but she was safe, secure, and she had you. That was worth everything to her. Sometimes love means sacrificing your own happiness for someone else's well-being. Your mother did that. I did that. And now you're living the life we all dream for you. That's the whole point. I put down my brush and walked over, hugging this man who'd been my guardian angel, my secret supporter, my chosen family. Thank you. For everything, for keeping her secret, for protecting me, for being here. Always, he said. That's what family does. That evening, I received an unexpected phone call. Maya, breathless with excitement. Turn on Channel 7, right now. I grabbed the remote, flipping through channels until I found it. A news special about successful artists who were changing the world through philanthropy. And there on my television screen was my story. The reporter stood in front of the Victoria Carter Memorial Arts Fund headquarters, interviewing students whose lives had been changed by the scholarship. A girl from rural Kentucky who was now showing her work in Paris. A boy from the Bronx who'd just been named one of Forbes 30 under 30. A non-binary student from Seattle who'd opened a community arts center for at-risk youth. Then the scene shifted to an interview with me from 3 months ago, footage I'd forgotten about. The reporter asking why I'd started the fund. My answer, honest and raw. My mother gave up her dream so I could have mine. She made impossible choices out of love. The least I can do is make sure other kids don't have to give up who they are to please their families. Art isn't a luxury. It's how we make sense of being human. Everyone deserves a chance to create, to express, to live authentically. The segment ended with a shot of the mural I was currently working on, the children's hospital piece. The reporter's voiceover, emotional and resonant. Elena Carter is proof that sometimes our greatest gifts come from our deepest pain, that the secrets we carry can become the truths that set us free. And that family isn't always about blood. It's about love, sacrifice, and the courage to choose your own path. I called Richard, he answered on the second ring. Did you see it? I did. His voice was thick with emotion. Your mother would have been so proud. I wish I'd let her be an artist. I wish I'd seen her the way you see her now. It's not too late to honor her memory. I know, that's why I wanted to tell you something. I'm selling the house. The one in Newton. Too many ghosts. Too many regrets. I'm moving to a smaller place. And I'm donating the proceeds to the fund, $4.2 million, in Victoria's name. Richard, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. It's the only way I can think of to make amends. To both of you, I took her dreams. I tried to take yours. This is my way of giving them back, even if it's too late for her. Thank you. No, Elena. Thank you. For showing me what real strength looks like. For forgiving me even when I didn't deserve it, for becoming exactly who you were meant to be, despite every obstacle I put in your way. We talked for an hour that night, really talked, for the first time in years, about my mother, about mistakes and regrets, about the slow, difficult work of rebuilding trust. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation, but it was real, honest, a foundation we could build on. Maya came over later with wine and Thai food. We sat on my studio floor, surrounded by paint and possibility, celebrating the strange, unexpected journey that had brought me here. You know what the crazy thing is? I said, halfway through my second glass of wine. If he hadn't kicked me out that night, I might never have met James. I might never have learned the truth about my mother. I might have stayed in medical school, miserable and resentful, living someone else's life. That one terrible moment changed everything. That's the thing about rock bottom, Maya said. Sometimes you have to hit it before you can push off and swim back to the surface. My mother hit rock bottom, I realized, when she chose security over love, when she married Richard knowing it meant giving up everything she wanted, and she spent the rest of her life trying to make sure I wouldn't have to make the same choice. And you didn't. You chose art. You chose truth. You chose freedom. That's her legacy. I raise my glass. To Victoria Carter, artist, mother, keeper of secrets. May her sacrifice not be in vain. Maya clinked her glass against mine. To Victoria. And to you, Elena, for having the courage to live the life she dreamed. We drank to complicated mothers and impossible choices, to guardian angels and found family, to secrets that destroy and truths that liberate, to the long, winding road from that snowy Christmas Eve to this moment of hard-won peace. 15 years after that night, I published a memoir, not a tell-all, not a revenge story, just an honest account of a girl who lost her father, found her truth, and discovered that identity isn't about blood or biology. It's about the choices we make, the values we hold, the love we choose to give and receive. The book became a bestseller, not because of scandal, though there was plenty of that, but because people recognized themselves in the story. The kids pressured to follow paths they didn't choose. The women who gave up dreams for security. The men who learned too late that control isn't love. The families broken by secrets and healed by truth. Richard read it, called me after finishing the last page. I don't come off well in this book, he said. It's honest, I know. That's why it matters. Thank you for telling the truth, even when the truth makes me look like the villain. You're not a villain. You're a human being who made mistakes. We all do. Some mistakes cost more than others. Yes, but regret can be the beginning of redemption if we let it. He was quiet for a long moment. I'm proud of you, Elena. I know I have no right to say that. I know I forfeited that privilege years ago. But I need you to know, I'm proud of the woman you've become. It was the first time he'd said those words in over a decade. They landed differently now, not as approval from an authority figure, but as acknowledgement from one imperfect human to another. James threw me a book launch party in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. Hundreds of people came, artists I admired, students from the fund, friends and supporters. And there, in the corner, slightly awkward but present, was Richard. He approached me near the end of the evening, when most of the crowd had thinned. I got you something. He handed me a wrapped package, small and rectangular. I opened it carefully. Inside was a framed photograph, old and faded. My mother, maybe 19 or 20, standing in front of an easel, paintbrush in hand, laughing at the camera. She was covered in paint, hair wild, absolutely radiant. I found this in an old box in the attic, Richard said. Before we were married, before everything got complicated, I thought you should have it. She was so alive then, so free. I wish I'd been the kind of man who could have let her stay that way. This is beautiful. Thank you. She'd be proud of you, he said. Not the obligatory statement of earlier years, but a real observation, a genuine belief. You became everything she wanted to be. You're living her unlived life. There's poetry in that. There's pain in that too. I wish she'd lived it herself. So do I. Every single day. The party wound down. James made a toast. Richard slipped out quietly. Maya hugged me tight and whispered, "You did it. You told your truth." That night, alone in my apartment, I stood at the window looking out over the city. 15 years since that Christmas Eve. 15 years of transformation and discovery, of pain processed into art, of secrets revealed and truths embraced, of families broken and rebuilt in new, more honest configurations. I thought about my mother, carrying her secret through 23 years of a half-lived life. I thought about James, loving her from a distance, protecting her daughter, honoring a promise made to a dying woman. I thought about Richard, slowly learning that love without control is the only kind worth having. And I thought about myself, the girl with my suitcase in the snow, homeless and heartbroken, not knowing that destruction would be the doorway to becoming whole. My phone buzzed, a text from one of the scholarship recipients. just sold my first painting. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you for believing in us." I smiled. This was my mother's real legacy. Not the money, though that helped. Not the secret, though that changed everything. But this ongoing commitment to creative freedom, to letting people become who they're meant to be without shame or compromise. I picked up the photograph Richard had given me, studied my mother's paint-splattered joy, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt completely at peace with her choices. She'd done the best she could with impossible circumstances. She'd protected me. She provided for my future. She'd loved me enough to plan for a freedom she'd never experienced herself. That's what mothers do. They plant trees whose shade they'll never sit in. They light paths they'll never walk. They sacrifice in ways their children won't understand until it's too late to say thank you properly. So I said it to her photograph, to the memory of a woman I now knew more deeply than I ever had when she was alive. Thank you, Mom. For the secret, for the sacrifice, for the trust fund and the guardian angel, and the courage to imagine a better life for me even when yours was so limited. I'm living it, every single day. I'm painting the sunrises you never got to paint. I'm making the choices you never got to make. I'm free because you paid the price of freedom with years of your own captivity. I hung her photograph in my studio, right above my easel, where I'd see it every morning when I began to work. A reminder, an inspiration, a promise kept. The book tour took me across the country. At every stop, people shared their own stories of family secrets and complicated truths, of fathers who didn't understand and mothers who sacrificed, of identity crises and hard-won freedom. We cried together, laughed together, recognized ourselves in each other's pain. In Chicago, a young woman approached me after a reading, tears streaming down her face. "Your story saved my life. I was about to give up art school to go to law school because my parents insisted. But after reading your book, I realized I have to choose my own path. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth." I hugged her tight. "Thank you for being brave enough to choose yourself." That's what the book became. Not just my story, but permission for others to tell theirs, to acknowledge the complexity of family, to embrace the messy, painful truth that sometimes the people who love us most also hurt us most, and that healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means making peace with it. 20 years after that Christmas Eve, I stood in my mother's favorite place, a small park in Beacon Hill, where she used to take me as a child. James stood beside me, older now but still steady. Richard was there too, remarried to a kind woman named Linda, who actually loved him for himself, not his money. Maya had flown in from California, where she ran a nonprofit helping underprivileged kids access arts education. The Victoria Carter Memorial Fund now supported 500 students annually. Some of them were here too, young artists carrying my mother's torch into the future. We were dedicating a memorial, a sculpture I'd designed and commissioned. My mother as a young woman, paintbrush in hand, face turned toward the sky, free and joyful and full of unrealized dreams. The plaque at the base read, "Victoria Ann Carter, artist, mother, believer in creative freedom. May her dreams live on in all who create without fear." James spoke first, his voice rough with emotion. "Victoria was the love of my life. I only had her for a short time, but she shaped everything I became. Her courage, her passion, her commitment to making sure her daughter had choices she didn't have, that's the legacy we celebrate today. This sculpture, this memorial, this ongoing fun, it's all a testament to one woman's determination to transform sacrifice into freedom." Richard spoke next, surprising everyone. "I failed Victoria in life. I tried to make her into someone she wasn't. I prioritized status and appearances over her happiness. I can't change that. But I can stand here today and promise to honor her memory by supporting the work her daughter is doing, by acknowledging that my way wasn't the only way, by learning, far too late but learning nonetheless, that love means letting people be themselves." I spoke last, looking at the sculpture of my mother, forever young, forever creating. "Mom, you kept a secret to protect me. You gave up your dreams so I could have mine. You arranged for my freedom from beyond the grave. I've spent 20 years trying to earn that gift, trying to make your sacrifice worth it. I hope I have. I hope every painting I create, every student we support, every life we touch through the fund is a reflection of the courage it took for you to make impossible choices. You weren't perfect. None of us are. But you loved me enough to imagine a better future and brave enough to make it possible. That's everything. That's enough. We unveiled the sculpture. My mother rendered in bronze, eternally young, eternally free, eternally creating, the symbol of every dream deferred, every sacrifice made, every truth hidden to protect the people we love. The young artists from the fund gathered around, touching the sculpture, taking pictures, making promises to honor her legacy through their own work. This circle of creative freedom, expanding outward from one woman's secret, one daughter's discovery, one truth that changed everything. That evening, a small group of us, the core family, chosen in blood, gathered for dinner at a quiet restaurant. James, Richard, and Linda, Maya, and me. An unlikely family formed from secrets and scandal and the slow, patient work of forgiveness. We raised our glasses. Richard led the toast, to Victoria and to Elena, for showing us all what real courage looks like. To impossible choices and unexpected freedom, Maya added. To secrets that destroy and truths that heal, James said. To family, I finished. In all its complicated, messy, beautiful forms, the one we're born into and the one we choose. May we have the wisdom to know the difference and the courage to embrace both. We drank. We ate. We told stories about the woman who'd brought us all together through her hidden love and impossible choices. We laughed and cried and acknowledged that healing isn't linear, that forgiveness doesn't erase hurt, that families can break and rebuild into something stronger. Late that night, back in my studio, I started a new painting, my largest yet, a triptych, 3 panels representing 3 generations of women in my family. My grandmother, who'd pressured my mother into a practical marriage. My mother, who'd hidden her truth to protect her daughter. And me, living the freedom they'd both sacrificed for. The past, the secret, the liberation. It would take months to complete, maybe years, but I had time. I had freedom. I had the resources to create without compromise. All thanks to a woman who loved me enough to plan for a future she'd never see. Who'd carried a secret that weighed on her conscience but protected her child. Who'd made a billionaire promise to be a guardian angel. Who'd written letters she'd never send, filled with love and regret and hope. My mother's story didn't have a happy ending, but mine did. And maybe that was the point. Maybe the measure of a parent isn't whether they had perfect lives, but whether they gave their children the tools to build better ones. I painted through the night, the way I always did when inspiration struck, my mother's face emerging from the canvas, young and old, joyful and sad, artist and martyr. Keeper of secrets and granter of freedom. At dawn, exhausted and paint-covered, I stepped back to look at the work in progress. It was raw, honest, the visual representation of everything I learned in 20 years since that Christmas Eve when my world ended and began simultaneously. My phone buzzed. James checking in. You up? Always. Come by? I need a second opinion on something. He arrived 30 minutes later with coffee and pastries, the breakfast of artists and insomniacs. He stood in front of the triptych for a long time, not speaking, just absorbing. Finally, he said, "It's your masterpiece. It's not finished. It's your masterpiece," he repeated. "This is what you were meant to create. Your mother's story told with complete honesty, the pain and the beauty, the sacrifice and the freedom, everything. Do you think she'd like it?" Elena, she's in it. Every brushstroke, every color choice, every expression. She's not just the subject. She's the soul of this work. Of course she'd like it. She'd love it. We sat on the studio floor drinking coffee, watching the sun rise through the huge industrial windows. 20 years of Sundays, James mused. That's how long we've been doing this. Coffee, conversation, stories about Victoria. Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up? That Christmas Eve? When you found me in that diner? No, I couldn't imagine anything past the next hour. But I'm glad we're here. I'm glad you kept your promise. "I'd keep it forever," he said. "That's what you do for people you love. You show up. You stay. You honor the commitments you make even when it's hard. Is that what you wish you'd done with my mother? Fought harder? Refused to let her go? No, because fighting for someone who's made a different choice isn't love. It's control. Your father taught me that, ironically. Real love is supporting people's autonomy even when their choices break your heart. Your mother chose Richard, chose the life she thought was best for her and for you. I had to respect that, and I'm glad I did because it led to you, to this moment, to all the good that's come from a painful beginning. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of trust and shared history. Then James stood, stretched, prepared to leave. "Before I go, there's something you should know. I'm updating my will. Everything goes to you when I die. The company, the fortune, the whole thing." "James, no, that's too much. You should leave it to charity or medical research or something that actually matters. You matter. You're the closest thing I have to a daughter. And more than that, I know you'll use it well. The Victoria Carter Fund will continue long after we're both gone. You'll support artists and dreamers and kids who need someone to believe in them. That's exactly what I want my legacy to be. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep painting, keep creating, keep living the life your mother dreamed for you. That's all the thanks I need." He left, and I returned to the triptych, working through another day and night, possessed by the need to get it right, to honor my mother's complexity, to show the nuance of her choices, to celebrate her courage without ignoring her pain. When I finally finished, 3 weeks later, Maya was the first to see it. She stood in front of the massive canvas, tears streaming down her face. "It's perfect. It's everything. It's the most important work you've ever done." We arranged a private showing, just family and close friends. The triptych displayed in a small gallery, dramatic lighting highlighting every detail. Richard stood in front of it for 15 minutes without moving, studying his late wife's face captured in 3 stages of her life. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I never really knew her. I thought I did, but I never understood this part. The artist, the dreamer, the woman who gave up everything. I just saw what I wanted to see." "We all do that sometimes," I said gently. "We're all limited by our own perspectives, by our fears and insecurities. She loved you in her way. Even if it wasn't the passionate love she'd had with James. She loved you. I wish that was enough. It was what it was. We can't rewrite the past. We can only learn from it and do better going forward." The triptych sold for $2.3 million at auction 6 months later. Every penny went to the Victoria Carter Memorial Fund. With that influx, we expanded to international programs, supporting young artists in countries where creative freedom was restricted or discouraged. My mother's sacrifice, multiplied across continents and cultures, her hidden dreams becoming a global movement. Now, 25 years after that Christmas Eve, I sit in my studio, older and grayer, but still painting every day. James passed away 2 years ago, peacefully, surrounded by people who loved him. He left me everything, just as he'd promised. I used it to establish a foundation that now supports thousands of artists worldwide. Richard visits monthly. We've built something new, not the father-daughter relationship of my childhood, but a genuine friendship between two people who've learned hard lessons about love and control and the courage it takes to let people be themselves. And my mother? She's everywhere. In every painting I create, in every student we support, in the sculpture in Beacon Hill that young artists visit for inspiration, in the letters I still reread on difficult days, her words a reminder that love sometimes wears the mask of sacrifice. The girl who stood on that porch 25 years ago, suitcase in hand, homeless and heartbroken, couldn't have imagined this future, couldn't have known that destruction would lead to creation, that a father's rejection would open the door to a truth that changed everything, that homelessness would lead to freedom. But that's the strange alchemy of pain. When we let it transform us instead of destroy us, when we use it as fuel for creation instead of an excuse for bitterness, it becomes the foundation of something beautiful, something true, something worth sharing. My mother kept a secret to protect me. James kept a promise to honor her. Richard learned to let go of control, and I learned that identity isn't about blood or biology or meeting other people's expectations. It's about the courage to be yourself, even when the cost is high. Especially when the cost is high. Every Christmas Eve, I return to that diner where James found me. I sit in the same booth, order the same coffee, and remember the girl I was. Lost and alone and terrified. And I thank her for being brave enough to survive that night, for walking into the unknown with nothing but a suitcase and hope. Because everything I am now, everything I've built, everything I've created, started in that moment of absolute devastation when I lost the father I thought I had and discovered the truth that would set me free. My mother gave me many gifts. The most important wasn't the money or the trust fund or the guardian angel. It was the gift of her complicated truth, the reminder that people are never simple, that choices are never easy, that love takes many forms, some of them painful and imperfect but real nonetheless, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is planning for someone else's freedom, even when you can never experience it yourself. Even when it means carrying secrets that weigh on your soul, even when it costs you everything. That's what she did for me, and now I do it for others, paying forward a gift I can never repay, supporting dreamers and artists and kids who need someone to say, your dreams matter, your truth matters, you matter. 25 years later, I finally understand what my mother was trying to tell me through years of hidden letters and secret plans. That the most revolutionary act is living authentically, that freedom is worth any sacrifice, and that the truest love doesn't try to control or diminish or reshape. It simply creates space for people to become who they're meant to be. I painted that truth into my final masterwork, the piece I'll never sell. It hangs in my home, visible from every angle. My mother, young and radiant, standing at a crossroads. Two paths stretching before her. On one path, security and respectability. On the other, love and artistic freedom. She's frozen in that moment of choice, forever caught between what her heart wanted and what her mind believed was right. But here's what I added that no photograph could capture. In the background, barely visible unless you know to look for it, is a girl. Me. Standing in the future my mother created through her sacrifice. Paintbrush in hand, free, whole, living the unlived life. That's the thing about generational trauma and generational healing. We carry forward both the wounds and the wisdom. My mother couldn't choose freedom for herself, but she fought to ensure I could. And now I fight to ensure thousands of others can too. The cycle doesn't just repeat, it can evolve, transform, become something better. Maya calls it poetic justice. James called it redemption. Richard calls it grace. I call it the long arc of love, bending toward freedom. The scholarship students sometimes ask me for advice. How do you know if you're making the right choice? How do you choose yourself without guilt? How do you honor your family while staying true to who you are? I always tell them the same thing. You won't know if it's the right choice until years later. You'll feel guilt regardless of what you choose. And honoring your family doesn't mean becoming who they want you to be. It means being so authentically yourself that you inspire them to question their own limitations. My mother honored her family by giving them what they wanted: a respectable marriage, a granddaughter from good stock, the appearance of a perfect life. But in doing so, she lost herself. She spent 23 years living a half-truth, loving a man she couldn't have, raising a daughter who reminded her daily of what she'd sacrificed. I honor her by doing the opposite, by living so fully and freely that her sacrifice wasn't in vain, by painting the canvases she never got to paint, by making the choices she was too afraid to make, by proving that creative freedom isn't selfish or frivolous. It's essential, sacred, worth fighting for. The foundation continues to grow. Last year, we supported 800 students across 42 countries, artists from Syria and Sudan and Myanmar, kids from Appalachia and South Chicago and rural India, young people with talent and passion but no resources, no family support, no safety net except the one my mother's secret created. Every time we award a scholarship, I think of her. Every time a student creates something beautiful, she lives again, Every time someone chooses authenticity over expectation, her sacrifice multiplies into meaning. Richard understands this now. He volunteers at the foundation, mentoring business-minded students who want to sustain their art through entrepreneurship, teaching them the skills he once used to control my mother's dreams, now repurposed to support others' freedom. It's his penance and his healing. The man who couldn't let his wife be an artist, now helping strangers become the artists they're meant to be. There's symmetry in that. Justice. The kind that comes not from punishment, but from transformed understanding. Linda, his wife, paints. Did I mention that? Watercolors mostly. Small landscapes she creates in the sunroom of their modest apartment. Richard doesn't critique or control. He simply buys her supplies and tells her he's proud. Learning finally at 73 what love without ownership looks like. Sometimes they visit the studio together. Linda paints while Richard and I talk about the foundation, about my mother, about the circuitous path to wisdom. He's become surprisingly one of my closest confidants. The man who once rejected me now, one of the few people who truly understands the weight of legacy and the possibility of redemption. We'll never have a conventional father-daughter relationship. That ship sailed on Christmas Eve 25 years ago. But we have something perhaps more valuable. Two people who hurt each other, learning to help each other heal. Two people who love the same woman in different ways for different reasons, now united in honoring her memory through action rather than regret. The memorial sculpture has become a pilgrimage site for young artists. They leave paintbrushes at the base, sketches, poems, notes thanking my mother for her sacrifice even though they never knew her. The park has had to install a small box for these tributes, emptied weekly, archived by the foundation as a record of how one woman's hidden truth ripples outward through generations. I read them sometimes, these notes from strangers. Thank you for choosing my freedom over your happiness. Thank you for being brave enough to plan for a future you wouldn't see. Thank you for proving that love isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, a secret carried to the grave so a daughter could fly. On the 25th anniversary of that Christmas Eve, I returned to the house where I grew up. Richard had long since sold it, but the new owners, fans of my work, invited me for a private visit. I stood in my childhood bedroom, now painted a cheerful yellow and filled with someone else's memories. This was where I'd studied for tests I didn't want to take, where I'd hidden sketches from my father's disapproving eyes, where I'd cried the night before medical school started, knowing I was walking the wrong path but too afraid to turn back. That girl felt like a ghost now, a shadow of someone I'd once been, but had no desire to return to. She lived in fear of disappointing people, of being too much and not enough simultaneously, of wanting things that didn't fit the narrative others had written for her life. I didn't miss her. But I thanked her for surviving, for being brave enough when pushed to the absolute limit to choose truth over comfort, for walking out that door with her suitcase, not knowing what came next but knowing she couldn't stay. Sometimes the bravest thing we do is leave, even when we have nowhere to go, even when the cold is bitter and the night is dark, even when everyone we love tells us we're making a mistake. My mother never left. She stayed in a marriage that suffocated her soul. She kept a secret that poisoned her peace. She sacrificed her authentic self on the altar of respectability and security. And she paid for that choice with decades of quiet unhappiness. But she made sure I wouldn't have to make the same choice. She planned, she saved. She arranged for guardian angels and trust funds and truths revealed at exactly the right moment. She turned her cage into my wings. That's what parents do when they can't save themselves. They save their children instead. They break cycles. They create possibilities. They plant seeds of freedom in soil watered by their own tears. I walked through the house one final time, touching walls that had witnessed so much joy and so much pain. My mother's laughter in the kitchen, my father's stern lectures in his study, family dinners that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow within. Christmases wrapped in tradition and duty rather than genuine warmth. This house had been my prison and my launching pad, the place I'd needed to escape and the foundation I'd needed to build from. Both and neither. A complicated origin story for a complicated life. The new owners asked if I'd sign something for them. A book, a print, anything. I signed a copy of my memoir, inscribing it with words that felt true, for the house that taught me what I didn't want. May your walls witness more joy than mine did. They seemed puzzled by the inscription, but I didn't explain. Some truths are too personal to unpack for strangers, some histories too heavy to summarize in pleasantries. I left that house for the final time, knowing I'd never return. There was nothing there for me anymore. No ghosts I needed to confront, no answers I hadn't already found. Just rooms full of someone else's present, barely haunted by my past. Maya met me at a coffee shop nearby. She'd flown in from California specifically for this anniversary, understanding without being told that I'd need support today. We sat by the window watching snow fall exactly as it had 25 years earlier, creating an eerie symmetry between then and now. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The path you chose? The conflict with Richard? All of it?" "Never. Not even on the hardest days. Because the alternative was living a lie. Becoming a doctor I didn't want to be. Marrying someone I didn't love. Reproducing my mother's mistake. That would have been the real tragedy." She nodded. "You saved yourself. That's more than most people manage. My mother saved me first. She just did it from beyond the grave." We talked for hours the way we had as college roommates when the world felt impossibly large and our dreams impossibly small. About the foundation's growth, about Maya's nonprofit, about Richard's transformation, about James's legacy, about all the ways that Christmas Eve had redirected not just my life, but the lives of thousands of people I'd never meet. One moment of devastation, one truth revealed, one choice to walk away rather than conform. And now, 25 years later, a global movement of creative freedom funded by a secret love affair and a mother's impossible sacrifice. "You should write another book," Maya said. "The whole story. Not just your part, but James's perspective. Your mother's letters. Even Richard's redemption arc. It's too important to leave untold." "Maybe. When I'm ready. When enough time has passed that I can see it clearly without the distortion of fresh emotion." You're never going to have that clarity. Emotion is the point. The messiness is the truth. Write it while it still hurts. That's when it matters most. She was right, of course. The sanitized version, the neat narrative with clean lessons and tidy morals, that's not real life. Real life is contradictory. People are both villains and victims. Choices are both right and wrong. Love is both liberating and limiting. My mother loved me and traumatized me. Richard raised me and rejected me. James saved me and burdened me with expectations I didn't ask for. I honored them and betrayed them and forgave them and resented them, sometimes all in the same day. That's the truth nobody wants to admit, that we contain multitudes, that we're capable of great love and great harm, often directed at the same people, that healing isn't linear and forgiveness isn't permanent, and redemption is something we choose daily, not something we achieve once and carry forever. I'm writing it now. This story, my mother's story, our collective story of secrets and sacrifices and the slow, painful work of becoming free. Not because I have all the answers, not because I've figured it all out, but because Maya was right. The messiness is the point. The ongoing struggle is the truth. 25 years later, I'm still unpacking that Christmas Eve. Still discovering new layers of meaning, still forgiving and re-forgiving the people who shaped me, still choosing freedom over comfort, still painting the life my mother dreamed and couldn't live, and I'll keep doing it until the day I die, because that's what it means to honor a sacrifice. Not with words or monuments or memorial funds, though those matter too, but with the daily practice of authentic living, with the courage to be exactly who you are, even when it disappoints people, even when it costs you relationships, even when the easier path beckons with promises of peace and acceptance. The foundation will outlive me. Students I'll never meet will create art I'll never see, funded by a woman's secret and a daughter's determination. The ripples will continue long after I'm gone, spreading outward into futures I can't imagine. That's legacy. Not what we accumulate, but what we set in motion. Not what we keep, but what we give away. Not the life we live, but the lives we make possible for others. My mother understood that. She couldn't save herself, so she saved me instead. And now I save others. and they'll save others still. On and on, generation after generation, one woman's hidden love affair transforming into a global movement of creative freedom. The snow falls outside my window now, just as it did 25 years ago. But I'm not that girl anymore. I'm not homeless or heartbroken or lost. I'm found, free, whole, living proof that destruction can be the doorway to creation, that secrets revealed can set you free, that the worst moments of your life can become the foundation of your greatest gifts. So if you're reading this, if you're standing at your own crossroads, if you're facing your own impossible choice between comfort and authenticity, between other people's expectations and your own truth, I want you to know something. Choose yourself, even when it's terrifying, even when you lose people you love, even when the path forward is unclear and the cost is high. Choose yourself, because the alternative is living a half-life, dying slowly while appearing alive, sacrificing your soul for temporary peace, becoming a ghost in your own story. My mother made that choice, and it haunted her until the day she died. But she made sure I wouldn't have to. She planned for my freedom even as she accepted her own captivity. She turned her tragedy into my triumph, and now I'm turning it into ours. Mine and yours and every person brave enough to choose authenticity over approval. Every artist who creates despite being told it's impractical. Every dreamer who pursues passion despite being told it's foolish. Every human who chooses to be themselves despite every pressure to conform. We are my mother's legacy, all of us, living the unlived lives of people who came before us, painting the canvases they never got to paint, making the choices they were too afraid to make, breaking the cycles, creating new possibilities, setting future generations free. That's the truth my mother hid. Not just that James was my father, not just that she'd loved someone else, but that she'd sacrificed everything to ensure I wouldn't have to, that her greatest act of love was planning for a freedom she'd never experience, that sometimes the most revolutionary thing we can do is refuse to pass on our trauma. 25 years later, standing in my studio surrounded by paintings and possibility, I finally understand what she was trying to tell me through those letters, through that trust fund, through that carefully orchestrated reveal on Christmas Eve. Be free, be whole, be authentically yourself, no matter what it costs, no matter who it disappoints, no matter how hard the path becomes. That's what she couldn't do. That's what she ensured I could. That's what I'm making possible for thousands of others. And that ultimately is what love looks like. Not possession or control, not comfort or security, but the fierce, determined commitment to someone else's freedom. Even when it means your own captivity, even when it means carrying secrets to the grave, even when it means sacrificing everything you wanted so someone else can have everything you dream. My mother gave me that gift. I'm passing it forward. And someday, someone who never knew me will stand in front of a canvas, paintbrush in hand, free to create without fear, and they'll be living proof that love transcends death, that sacrifice multiplies into meaning, that one woman's hidden truth can become 1,000 futures. That's the story of how my dad kicked me out on Christmas, and a billionaire revealed the truth my mom hid. But more than that, it's the story of how destruction became creation, how secrets became freedom, how one impossible choice rippled outward through generations, transforming pain into possibility. It's my story, my mother's story, and maybe in some small way it's yours too.